Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Today is, oh my gosh, it's already the 3rd of April. Like, I can't believe we're in Q2 already. It's crazy how time flies. And here in New Hampshire, it was like 60, 65 degrees the other day, and we're going to get a foot of snow tonight in April. So, yeah, lots of fun. We're here today with really good friends of ours, Michelle and Joe from Lingard. Joe, since you're in that top corner, why don't you take a second and introduce yourself and say hello and welcome?
Hello. Thank you, Tim. Welcome, everybody. I am Joe Alapat, co-founder and chief product officer at Lingard. Super happy to be here. A big part of the reason why I founded Lingard is around how MSPs can continuously safeguard their end customer environments, govern them properly, get to a continuous compliance type outcome. So again, happy to be here. Back to you, Tim.
Hey, and welcome. We're gonna bring Michelle on up here as soon as I mute my other screen. And Michelle, there you go.
Thanks, Tim. It's so great to be here. I'm Michelle Accardi. I'm the CEO of Lingard. I am super passionate about this space and MSPs because I was an MSP. I led a very large MSP before I came to Lingard, and have felt the pains of trying to help customers understand and secure their attack surface. And so understanding and driving the right outcomes for MSPs is really all about what I want to talk about today, and how you 10x your leveraging your ecosystem and what's in it for you. So really happy to be here, and I'll turn it back over to you, Tim.
Hey, and thanks. And hopefully you can't hear my granddaughter in the background, but she's very unhappy at the moment, crying and throwing a fit. But that's okay, because we love our grandkids, and that's why we have them.
That's
right?
what it sounds like in most MSPs, Tim. I mean,
There's a lot of whining and crying in the background. We know that feeling.
Exactly. And so, yeah, we're happy to have her. Like I said, she was just born on Thanksgiving. It is our first granddaughter. So my wife gets the privilege and pleasure of watching her a day a week. So I'm going to close the door, which I did, and hopefully it's not too loud in the background. But anyways, I'm Tim Golden, founder of Compliance Scorecard, one of the first governance as a service platforms built by an MSP for MSPs. We help you and your customers solve the governance issue. So without further talking about me and our stuff, Michelle had this really great post the other day. Actually, it wasn't necessarily the other day. It was probably a couple of weeks ago, but I'm going to pull this up here. Let me do this real quick, and let's see if I can get it correct. There we go. Oh, no, wait, that's Michelle's. Let me find the other one. Hold on.
Windows.
This is where we have a little filler music in the background while Tim gets his navigating correctly over here. Michelle, while I'm digging that up, why don't you tell us about this concept of 10X?
So the whole idea of having a 10X ecosystem is all about collaboration and innovation, and creating a network that better enables MSPs and your customers to take advantage of the collective knowledge that we as vendors in the ecosystem can provide, so that it's not about doing business with one vendor, but about how you leverage those vendor relationships, those partnerships, real partnerships, to get the very most out of them, that help you to grow your business and 10x your business. So that's why we call it the 10x ecosystem. It's the idea of this power of the collective expertise and the diversity of thought that you get when you bring the best of the best in terms of your vendors together to help provide you capabilities. So at Lingard, for instance, we're an attack surface management platform. So what that means is we help you with IT asset discovery across your stack. So think about all the different vendors you have in your stack, and how, if you're dealing with them on an individualized basis, how challenging that can be to really understand and get visibility across them, across that attack surface. So for us, we believe in building very deep partnerships and relationships across your stack, and then also horizontally into the space. For example, with Compliance Scorecard, like how can we leverage Lingard's information and configuration change detection capabilities and audit capabilities to be able to be part of a governance story. And so this is where relationship with Compliance Scorecard plus Lingard plus all of those other vendors that we're building onto can provide real value. And that's just one example. There are literally, I can think of hundreds of examples, frankly, of where if you're putting your partners, your vendors together to really meet your needs, it takes you to the next level. And it's really about empowering you by leveraging the knowledge that we have in this space.
Yeah, I love this, whole better together concept, right? So, you mentioned you're a former MSP. I was a former MSP. We've kind of all been in this space and, trying to think, how MSPs operate and having to deal with vendors. You made a post just the other day, too, about working with really bad vendors and working with really good vendors. And what I love most, not just about the MSP community, but about the vendor community, is there's a large number of us that want to work together, that want to be able to help the MSPs, as Keith said here a few minutes ago, bringing up this, not just 10x, but the value gets higher and higher. So thanks, Dr. Keith, for bringing that up. Joe, what are your thoughts around this whole concept of better together and 10xing the ecosystem and all of us kind of playing in the same sandbox?
Yeah, I would say that one of the biggest things is if vendors work together to provide value to MSPs, how can the MSPs and MSSPs start to deliver a solution stack to their end customer? This is so important because it's what I love to share these days, which I'm going to share my screen and let me know whether you all can see it. Can you all see this?
Yep.
Okay, so when we think about NIST and we think about identify, protect, detect, respond, recover, all of this craziness, how do we think about being able to actually think about all the pillars and think about govern, which is, by the way, Tim Golden's favorite word. I realize this is that his favorite trigger word is the word govern. If you say that, yeah, there you go. You get the hearts from Tim Golden. So just keep that in mind when you do your LinkedIn post. You'll get a magic heart. But here's the deal. It's tough when every MSP walks into a conference. What happens? Your brain explodes. I was here like during my MSP days. I'm sure Michelle, Tim, you've been here. You walk into the conference, you're like, oh my God, there's like 10 new logos. I don't know who they are. We get excited. We want to know what everyone's doing. But then you're like, where does this all fit? I need a decoder ring. I need to know how to build a solution stack because ultimately all these things need to work together to provide value to the end customer. And the end customer just wants to know that their MSP says this, right? They say this one phrase. You got that, right? You're taking care of that, right? They'll say that. That's a very loaded phrase, which means one throat to choke. They want one vendor to just take care of everything. They love their trusted advisor. Most used phrase in the MSP industry other than proactive, right? Oh, I even get the sparklies, but the reality is here's the deal. We want to be that trusted advisor, right? We all do. I was there. I wanted to be that trusted advisor for my end customer, but we struggled with, well, what is the solution stack that I'm trying to provide the end customer? So that's what we're thinking about when Michelle talks about the 10X ecosystem. She wants to see how can vendors and the MSPs collaborate so that we actually are intentional about this and deliver really neat outcomes. Opening up an API is just getting started. Let's work together. Let's drive value. That's what Tim, right, and Compliance Scorecard and Lingard are working together. That's why we're here.
Yeah, and there's been such a large emphasis over the last several years, or maybe even a decade. I don't know. Timing is always wrong for me. On the right side, on the detect, respond, and recover side of MSP operations, right? And that's great because we need to be able to detect the stuff, respond to the stuff, recover from the stuff, right? Because that when the boom happens, that's a very important part. When I was at my MSP, we lived in left of boom. We lived in proactive approach. And it took us a while to get there, don't get me wrong. But as we started to get better on the proactive side, we found that the detect and respond and recover actually started to wane off, right? Because we had a good govern function, we had a good change management function, we had a good risk program in place for us and our customers,
Yeah,
right?
your best defense is a good offense. I mean, that is really what this whole left of boom side of things is. And I think you exemplify when you were an MSP the focus there,
Mhm.
enabling you to avoid having boom happen at all. That's not to say that the risk is eliminated completely, but I like to think that when left and right of boom come together, that's where this whole idea of 10x ecosystem and really getting good governance, right? That it really comes into play. If you haven't done the fundamentals of if you haven't done those pieces, there's no way that you're not going to have an incident or a challenge down the road. And I can tell you that I've seen, heard, and experienced my own levels of challenges when that wasn't done. Having acquired, over 13 MSPs and having integrated them in my experience and having talked to probably hundreds of
Mhm.
MSPs, maybe even thousands, and hearing the horror stories of where
Mhm.
things haven't been done, where just having a good sense of understanding of is MFA on or off for
Yeah.
the customers. I mean, horror stories where MFA is turned off, crypto miner comes in, runs an Azure bill up $300,000. Cyber insurance doesn't pay, leaving an MSP with that to hold because they didn't do the right things on the left of boom. So those are just example stories that are real and happening to MSPs today when they don't get left and right of boom together.
Right. And so not only, and let's face it, not everybody loves documentation as much as I do. Right. And truth be told, reading and writing, not my strong suit. I've, come a long way in 20 years, but what it does, not just in that, preemptive stuff, but it also helps you gain that efficiency. Right. I'm a big proponent of if I have to do something more than twice, I script it and I write a process, and this is what we follow. And so, we're getting a lot of great comments in here. Let me just pull up a couple here, right? So Heath, good friend of ours, Heath Spencer, talked a little bit about your battle card that you had there in adding IAM and IDP. Oop, just lost Michelle. Hopefully her internet is coming back up. I'm not quite sure what she did, but there you are. You're back. Look at that. I say your name and you magically appear. So back to Heath's comment here, right? Adding IAM, identity access management, PAM, privileged access management, all of those, mouthful of acronyms that I live in a compliance world. When we look at coming together as vendors and what's presented to MSPs, in the millions of logos and tools that are available to them, right? This concept of 10xing, this concept of better together, and as Joe pointed out, the stack, right? What goes in the stack? And we may not necessarily talk about a specific product in a specific portion of that stack. I know, Joe, you had some representations of that. But as MSPs, we love our tools, and we want to know the right tools to put in that. And we want to be able to not only have the right tools, but make money with those tools, right? And so when we do these connections, when we make these APIs and these strategic relationships between Compliance Scorecard and Lingard, each of us as vendors don't have to reinvent the wheel. In fact, together, we can make that wheel rounder, faster, and more efficient for you as the MSP, right? Being able to pull these pieces together and being able to make your car go faster, as Keith would like to say, drive his limo to the airport faster. And so, yeah, it's it kind of starts to get us into we were talking left of boom and right of boom, a little bit around this idea of risk, right? So, and kind of what that looks like, from an MSP perspective, from a business perspective. So I think we're going to talk a little bit more, unless Joe, you have something else you want to share about the stack, about this, concept of, the decoder ring.
Yeah, no, I think we ought to get into it, and then I think we'll talk about it as we're walking through it. We want to have a recipe that makes it easy, largely with Compliance Scorecard and Lingard together. What we're thinking about is continuous compliance. That's what we're thinking about. How does an MSP deliver that to their end customer? So valuable to managing risk and governing it properly, and we want to make it simple. That's what our better together value is, and that's something I'd love to dig into today.
Yeah, continuous compliance monitoring, CCM. It's, an acronym that's not talked a lot about in the space, but it is becoming more and more frequent. And listen, compliance is not a checkbox exercise, right? Nor should be security or any of these other things. And, making integrations with tools like Lingard and Compliance Scorecard to be able to prove that you're doing the things that you are hopefully delivering to your customer, right? And being able to prove that over time and ongoing, right? It's not a one and done exercise. Change management, for example. I know you all deal with that really well over there at Lingard. I built my own change management system years ago and realized I missed 90% of the stuff. And then I was like, oh, wait, Lingard's got this covered. I don't need the tool I wrote for myself anymore.
Yeah, and Tim, I just want to go back to the whole concept of compliance in general. So one of the things, as I talk to MSPs, oftentimes they're like, well, I don't really deal with compliance, but I think that they do, right? And in every case, it's what's your IT policy? What is it that you are implementing to ensure that you don't have challenges down the road? It's not just compliancy to, some certification, essentially. It's really about just how do you do your day-to-day job and prove that you're doing your day-to-day job in a way that is easily digestible by business people that you're serving, not just from an IT perspective, but from a business perspective. How are you showing them that your standards are being met and their standards, more importantly, are being met?
Yeah, I love that because, the word compliance can kind of come off as this negative connotation, this scary thing, this audit. Oh my gosh, I'm going to be audited by my tax collector, blah, blah, blah. And the reality is we look at the word compliance as the referee, right? We look at compliance as though they have the playbook, they have the rule book. They're the people on the football field throwing the flag, or if you're into soccer, the red card or the yellow card, right? Because they know the rules, or compliance are the rules for us to follow, right? Now, truth be told, we've probably been living and breathing compliance our whole life, even with our very first job, by signing that employee handbook, right? Because part of the HR compliance is employee handbook, sexual harassment training, equal opportunity training, that kind of stuff. Now, as an MSP, we're taking that same mentality of the HR compliance and we're kind of applying those guardrails to the security pieces that we're doing for us and our customers. So I like to think of the word compliance as more like a referee.
Yeah. Well, I was just reading the comments that we got from Keith Nelson, that it's really about guiding the customers through that, not having an interruption to something that. But actually, this goes to that whole 10x ecosystem approach. It's like you have to be showing your customers that when you're bringing a solution to help them with. It's going to have business benefit. And I think governance, the ability to provide a framework and show how you're helping your customer to do their job more efficiently and in alignment with the controls that they may have in place, is super important. And I think that's the value. That's the value of this 10X ecosystem that you can bring to bear, and make your vendor partners do this with you. It shouldn't be that you have to dream this up. We as a vendor community coming together and providing that value and telling you the story of, hey, it's Lingard plus Compliance Scorecard plus any number of additional vendors that we're going to bring you this capability that allows you not to interrupt, but to really disrupt in a positive way and make you go faster, much faster.
On that point, I think what's important is I've shared MITRE's attack framework. I don't know, like, feel free to post in the commentary. I think this is important. I don't know how many of you all have actually looked at this resource, which is unbelievable. And the reason why I say this is, why are we speaking about better together? Why are we speaking about left of boom, which is something I saw in the comment. Tanner was speaking about it, which is all about CIOs and CISOs have a key phrase. What they'll say is there's a lot of blocking and tackling. You know what blocking and tackling is code for? It's governance. It's compliance. It's data access reviews. It's making sure that everyone who has privileged access is supposed to have privileged access. You know why all that's important? Because every dollar spent there reduces the impact of an event. It makes some attacks irrelevant. I'll give you an example. When you use a weak password, which we all do, we all have them, and they're somewhere. What is the way to disrupt an attacker from using that weak password? Simple. 3-letter word, MFA, right? Well, it's an acronym. Multi-factor authentication. That's how you make the weak password situation irrelevant. That's what I love that word. How do you make an attacker irrelevant? And when you look at MITRE's attack framework and we talk about boom, a lot of people think it's when an actual event happens, right? And if you look at that framework, you'll see it impact on the far right, right? That impact is actually too late. It's too little too late. You have to back it up to initial access and maybe even as far left as you can, so that when an attacker tries to do some harm to your environment, how do you make that irrelevant? You know the boring word of compliance and governance, that's where it comes in. If you did that right, that initial access is disrupted right there. And this is how we have to educate our customer around a sense of urgency, because here's a phrase I want you to use with your end customer. The attacker is not waiting for your annual security audit. They're hitting you every millisecond. That means you need to act now. All right, I'll get back off the podium.
Act now, right? I feel like, who is that guy, the ShamWow guy? I forget his name, Dave something or other. But no, I think you make some really great points, right? You know, when we it's really challenging for MSPs sometimes to be able to not only get a seat at the table, but to get out of our own way with acronyms and words that our customer doesn't understand, right? I mean, if I was, let's say, a restaurant owner and you approached me with NIST or PCI or CMMC.
We have a restaurant owner here, actually.
Oh, well, we do, right? So, you know, if I'm trying to have the conversation with, you know, Michelle as a restaurant owner, and I walk in there and I start throwing acronyms and I start throwing PCI DSS and credit card readers and Wi-Fi, like, your eyes are going to glaze over, right? So, Michelle, what are some of those risks that you might face as a restaurant owner?
Yeah, well, first I'll give everyone. So my husband's actually the restaurant owner. I'm a connoisseur of that. But I will tell you, for him, you know, it's about what are the existential risks, and explaining what really happens to his business should he experience a breach. Like, how does that really affect his employees, the brand reputation, the things that bring people inside the business? That's what's, you know, I think small businesses, that's how they think. They think about, you know, what is it that happens? There's also this misnomer for a lot of small businesses that they've gone out and they've bought cyber insurance and they've hit an attestation, or they've had their MSP hit an attestation and they think everything's fine. Nothing's going to happen to me. I'm covered. Well, the reality is, unless they've got good governance around all of these different areas, MFA, EDR, backup, all of these different areas, you're really in a bad spot because ultimately cyber insurance won't pay. And so what we've tried to do is, again, leveraging the power of the 10x ecosystem, is being able to surface and make visible in one easy dashboard across the stack, from cloud to from your Microsoft 365 all the way down to your network, to your endpoints, and show in one place where you get visibility of, are you good or are you not good? Red, yellow, green, essentially, and have an exportability capability for an MSP to show their customer and prove either that they're in compliance or that there's areas that they need to continue to work with them and get them to invest. It's a great way to, again, show that value of the 10x ecosystem, how all these solutions come together to really provide you know, a scorecard, just like you have in your compliance scorecard. Again, taking it to all the other areas of governance and risk as well.
Yeah. So, we were chatting the other day in preparation for this, and I think it was, somewhere along the lines about the toothbrushes getting hacked and taking over DDS the world with the toothbrushes, right? But here's the thing, like, as a restaurant, as family member owning a restaurant, right? Having freezers, right? Having monitoring systems on those freezers, or IoT devices on those freezers, sending you alerts when the stuff drops below temperature or goes above temperature, right? Now, I could be a malicious actor and not like the restaurant, or like the restaurant, whatever, and get into those devices and manipulate it so that you're not getting the alerts, and then your freezer goes down. All of the raw material for you to make your awesome recipes are now gone because the freezer defrosted and you weren't alerted, right? So when I think of a small business owner having that conversation with the restaurant owner, like, hey, I know we help you with your credit cards and your Wi-Fi and your TVs here, but our network scanning tool, our Lingard, picked up something called freezer. You want to talk to me about that? Oh, of course, that monitors, like, and how is that, like, it's plugged into the internet? Did you change the default password? Does it have two-factor? Like, those kinds of things, by using something like a Lingard and some discovery things, like, hey, we found a thing called freezer. What is that? Now you can actually get that seat at the table and be able to talk to them, much like Keith said, talk to them like they're, like, don't talk to them about the tech. Talk to them about risk, reputation, and revenue. And as you can see, I can't type as fast as I can talk.
I like the highlighting feature there, but the risk, revenue, and reputation, so important. And if you talk about risk, for example, here's a good example. An MSP can easily start talking about email security and start spouting off about SPF, DKIM, and DMARC, and you've immediately confused that CFO, right? Immediately. Don't even talk to them about sender policy framework and try to spell it out. What you have to talk to them about is business email compromise. And you have to say, here are the ramifications. When you go on vacation, does your controller have the ability to wire more than X dollars? Let's say it's $10,000 without your approval. And there's a simple piece of advice I tell every MSP: please tell your end customer they have to put dual authority in place at their bank. Think of this amazing advice you're going to provide. This is trusted advisor stuff. It's not technical, it's business. Tell the CFO, please put dual authority in place. You know why? That's the fail safe for when your controller tries to impress you and the CFO's on vacation and suddenly $50,000 got wired. Why? Because email got compromised, and supposedly the CFO sent a note about a confidential project that involves wiring $50,000 somewhere. And everyone's like, why would anyone do this? It happens like, I don't know how many times, like probably 20 or 30 times a day, because this is what the cyber insurance companies are telling us. They're telling us that business email compromise, that basic problem, is still unsolved, and they're doing this. Like, why can our customers not figure this out? So this is your opportunity. Educate your customers. And then you know what you'll tell them? We're going to take care of the other complicated stuff. You know, these acronyms and pea soup of mess. We're going to make it more secure. We're going to set it up, and you're going to see green instead of red.
And you know what might have helped, or at least put a process in place for that wire transfer is, I don't know, a wire fraud policy. Sorry, shameless plug, but that's the thing, right? So, you know, that's a left of
I didn't even know I set you up like that, Tim. But I don't know. What is that, by the way? What is the wire? Like, what is that post?
I'm kind of try to be quick. Try to be quick on my feet. So this is why I love doing these things live, so I can be pretty quick on my feet, right? So this is a left of boom exercise, right? If we, as the MSP, had the conversation with the customer around, hey, have you, who touches money in the organization? And are they the right people touching money? Tell you what, let's get everybody on the same page. I have this wire fraud policy. Let's put that in the organization so that there's checks and balances. So there's left of boom process in place so that when that CEO or when that CFO gets the text message, urgent project, wire money, wait a minute, a phone call happens, carrier pigeons, red flags, tin can, like we now have a policy that says we don't wire any money over X number of dollars without a process in place, right? Something as simple as a wire fraud policy. I'm going to say it won't 100% fix it, but it'll at least put some roadblocks in place, just like 2FA would put some roadblocks in place. So, Joe, I see you're sharing something too. Let's pop that up here.
Since you're so quick on the trigger, I'm going to be quick on the trigger. And this is what we recommend to folks is while you're doing all this, here's the problem, right? This is the story I want to tell everyone. When everything is running smoothly, that's when your customer says, hey, why am I paying you all this money? Like everything's running fine. I mean, there's no fires. That's exactly the moment where we all get frustrated, but it is a recognition that we need to show and we need to celebrate visible progress. This is a core value at Lingard. As an MSP, you have to celebrate visible progress with a customer. You have to show them how horrible it was. You have to then show them, are you green or are you red on email security? You don't have to get into the details, but it has to be as simple as red, yellow, green. And you have to show them how you're taking them on a journey to get to green around business email compromise, which does include wire fraud policies. It also includes, hey, there's a lot of technical stuff here. I don't need to explain all these details, but these things have to be green to make sure that your situation is better than your peers, and you don't want to be in that headline. And we don't want you to be in the headline because we're the MSP on record, so we need to get you to green. And that's why I always tell folks, please, talk about how the game has changed. We cannot do AV and freaking firewalls and think we've solved the problem. The game has changed. It is such a multi-headed beast. If the attacker's using AI, you're in trouble. So you better change your game. You better level up. That's my message to everyone. Have a sense of urgency around this because it scares the crap out of me, the risk environment that we're in right now. And I don't like to throw fear, uncertainty, and doubt. That's not what I'm saying. Please be careful. This environment is very crazy right now, and it's changing. And that means that we have to protect our attack surface. We got to do the blocking and tackling. We got to do the boring stuff, which is the governance, which ultimately results in greater value. $1 spent left of boom is going to yield extreme value for you.
Well, we like to say that when you're focusing again on providing a 10x ecosystem capability and leveraging solutions like Compliance Scorecard and Lingard together, we're going to give you growth, we're going to give you profitability, and we're going to give you sanity. We're going to give you GPS. We're putting you on the road to the right areas to grow your business and to do it efficiently, and to enable you to sleep at night. Because I can tell you I had lots of nights of not sleeping when I was an MSP, worried about, do I have a way to see, to really know that we're doing the right things for, and I worked for a fabulous MSP. So understanding and, if I'm just imagining myself, if I was at a smaller MSP that didn't have all the resources that I had to bring to bear, what it would be like without having this ecosystem of people to help me on that road. So, ultimately, I would put everything in the lens of, is your partner ecosystem helping you with driving growth, doing it more efficiently, getting you better EBITDA, and allowing you to sleep better at night?
And
GPS
keeping you
for MSPs.
and keeping you sane.
Yeah, keeping you sane.
Yeah, the countless number of nights I've had, like, worrying about a thing or thinking about a thing, staying awake because, oh my gosh, that customer just would not listen to me about something, and something happened. Right. Not that we have never had an incident at any of our MSPs. We've all had those kinds of things, and it could be just as something as simple as losing a file, or maybe someday I should tell the story about how I ransomwared myself.
Wow, that sounds interesting.
All right, I'll TLDR version. We were using a piece of software to do DLP and data discovery. So it'd scan the network to find stuff and tell us where PII was. Awesome, because, data discovery, part of the govern function and part of the compliance piece. Great. Found a tool, was using the tool, had a proof of concept going for a while. Okay, wasn't exactly what I needed. Uninstall the tool, move on. What I didn't realize was that one of the features that I was unaware of at the time of the tool was to actually, when it discovered the files, encrypt them. So as long as the tool was running and you open the document, it would decrypt it, it would open it, everything would be fine. Okay, no problem. Uninstall the tool, and all of a sudden, staff are like, I can't open this file. I can't open that file. Some random file in, Texas, on the Texas server, some random file on the Florida. Like, this is really weird. I brought our good friends in from Huntress and Perch, back then West Perch, and we couldn't figure it out. And there was one thing that kind of gave it away. Every single file had the same header across the top. Okay, that looks like ransomware. Do the discovery, dig into, there's nothing in the network that we can find. And sure enough, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to kind of look at the add and remove programs. And I found one of the boxes still had it on there. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I dug into the tool. I dug into their documentation. I reached out to their support. We had a big conversation, and come to find out, when you uninstalled the tool at that particular version of it, it didn't decrypt the files first. So I had to go back, reinstall all the tools, decrypt all the stuff, and then uninstall. So I literally ransomwared myself.
Tim, that's what I call the weak in the knees moment that all of us have experienced in our businesses. It could be you need to hit payroll, next month, and you don't have enough cash in the bank. I've been there. Right. And that's where worry really gets you into this really terrible place. But when you have a security incident in place and something is happening, if you've experienced it once, it's like you never want to be there again. It's that feeling of, look, I've been in an environment where the customer, like, we had a click happy person, they somehow clicked on something, ransomware started to take effect. Oh my God, that was a weak in the knees moment. The first thing I asked the team, are the backups functioning properly? Please, God, tell me. And it was, thank God. And we had to restore for that environment because that's how bad it got. And when you see that type of event happen, it really makes you focus on left of boom even more and go, wow, I never want to go there again. I just don't want to feel that jello knees, that thing.
Oh, I know. I lived it.
Well, it's one of the things I became so passionate about Lingard and our capabilities, because I remember having moments where someone didn't take, our managed backup offering, and just having a Lingard there that has all the configurations for all of these different systems, so that, God forbid, managed backup didn't work. we could actually go back and get things installed appropriately very easily. And also, being able to be the watcher of the watcher to make sure managed backup actually did. That's one of the things that made me so passionate and want to become CEO of Lingard. So,
you know what, Michelle, I have to share one story. Back in my MSP days, we did an assessment for a customer. It was a prospect, and they were pretty tough one to cover. I had my technical person live. We were doing an assessment. They wanted to be part of it, so they were watching. So we're like, all right, so what's your backup process? Let's review it. And then the guy explained to me, the CFO, pretty well-known company here in Houston, he said, well, I take this USB drive home every night, and I do a rotation. I'm like, oh, okay, so that's your off-site. Okay, great. Let's go take a look at that. And then my tech goes and looks at the USB drive, and he goes, there's nothing here. And we're like, okay, well, what's going on? So then he starts looking at the backup configurations, and he sees that the configuration was pointed to the wrong place to do the off-site backup. This has been failing. You could look in the log for the last 2 years. He was taking home a drive that was blank every day for the last 2 years. That guy, you know what he did? He did this. He's like, oh my God, just sign me up. I'm done. Like, this is crazy. And the current provider, I mean, it's unfortunate, but that's what, unfortunately, was bad management, bad governance.
Bad governance. How do you define governance? Like, how do you do that for, because it's such a broad, could mean so much.
Yeah, and thanks for bringing that up. It is something that I'm obviously passionate about. When I think of the word governance, I actually relate that to a process, right? Having a program, or, you might think of like Keith put over here, Sigma 6. Let me see if I can find that comment real quick, right? Here it is. Having this, a documented process, or as Keith says, a Sigma 6 workflow. For us, we define governance as a 4-part program. Alignment. Is the thing that you're doing aligned to a thing? Is the policy aligned to business structure? Is the control aligned to a framework? Is the thing aligned to a thing? Great. Say what you do and do what you say. The second part is authorization. As MSPs, we are facilitating this work with our customer and charging for it, by the way. We better be. And as the facilitator, it is not our job to authorize devices, authorize policies, authorize stuff. That is really the burden of our customer, because it's their stuff. We are facilitating that work and charging for it, but it's really having the customer involved in that conversation to make sure the appropriate person is authorizing stuff. From there, we look at this adoption concept. I mean, what good's a password policy if end users are not trained on it and they don't adopt them? What good is employee handbook if the employee doesn't sign it and adopt it, right? So that adoption process. And lastly, some kind of assessment cadence. Let's face it, SharePoint is where documents go to die. They become shelfware, and we forget to do them. Like Joe said a few minutes ago, not reviewing the backup logs because we didn't have a policy, or we didn't know where it lived in SharePoint or even in the software itself. We didn't have a defined governed function that said, hey, once a month, somebody should probably check the backup logs. Right? So we defined governance as that 4-part process: alignment, authorization, adoption, and assessment. And so bringing that work into the MSP and taking a very simple 4-part process to your customer in terms they can understand. So that's how we define governance.
Wes Spencer actually talks about this as well. It's the did you know, right? Did you know?
Yeah.
How do you verify, right? You ask those questions. How do you know for sure that backups are running properly? And if you don't have a way to answer that, how do you know? Did you know? And you can't just pure confirmation. I call it a launch check, right? Mm-hmm. Like, how do you know you have a pre-launch check every morning that everything is ready on your IT security stack? And if you're not all green, it needs to be reviewed. And that's how you get a place to run like a fridge. And that's what I realized is when I finally discovered a level 3 engineer that was legit, that knew how to make a place run like a fridge. That's when I realized, oh, this is what, true IT security management's all about. And this was back in 2002, 2003 timeframe when I discovered what that was. And he would, his guy named Frank, and he would take forever to set the environment up properly. He's like, Joe, can you stop bothering me? And I'm like, why are you taking so long? He's like, I'm going to make this place run well. And he would make it run like a fridge, and we would not have fires. And that's how it should be done.
Well, and that's how your vendors, as an MSP, that's how your vendors should be helping you, put in place all of these workflows, the process of documentation. As Keith Nelson was saying in a chat to us, ultimately, he doesn't necessarily use the word governance, but he takes the customer through what all of those pieces of the process that help them to understand and put it into business context for them, which I think is good, Keith. I think it's less important the word you use and more important that you're taking people through that full workflow.
Yeah, so you could use the words like BPNM, right? Business process and notation. You could use the words Sigma 6, equating the word governance to a process. You don't even have to use the word governance. And by the way, NIST just added the whole governance. So it's kind of a thing, right? It's starting to get in everybody's face. So maybe us as a community starting to use the word more frequently might help the small business actually understand that we need a govern process or a govern function. I want to pull something up here real quick, Joe, because you talked about your launch checklist. Anybody been in the military? Anybody been in the Army? Anybody know what a PMCS is? Anybody have to do these?
What is a PMCS?
So preventative maintenance checks and services. As a mechanic, in the military, we had a book that literally every day we had to go through and walk through our checklists. Does the horn work? Does the lights work? Is it gassed up? Check the tire pressure, wiper blades. Anytime we wanted to take a vehicle out for the first time that day, we had to open up the PMCS. Preventative maintenance checks and services, and literally walk through and check the boxes and sign off and hand it to the motor pool. Much like you were saying, Joe, what is our launch checklist?
Tim, I work in the military. I know a lot of people in the military, and I'm going to drop another term, and that's sit rep, right?
Yeah.
What is a situation report? Having situational awareness is so important. And if you understand what a sit rep is, it's crazy, right? Like how it changes the way that you play the game of managing IT and security. You should always have complete situational awareness. And this is what drove why we do what we do at Lingard always, is that we need to think about having awareness of everything going on around us and our customers so that you understand the attack surface. You understand how things are running. You understand the IT side, because ultimately, what did your customer ask you to do? They didn't ask you to chase intruders. They asked you to enable their business to be profitable and help them grow their business. And they're like, you take care of the rest of that stuff. I don't know any of that nonsense. You take care of that, right? Because help me grow the business. And they assume that you're going to make the place run like a fridge.
Well, I think the important thing is the customer's going to assume it. So you have to know that they're assuming it. So you better be taking all of these offensive positions, taking that good offense to be a good defense. You have to, that's the place you have to start at as an MSP.
Yeah, and I think that whole assumption conversation, we could probably do 8 or 10 more webinars just on that, right? But the reality is, if I'm a small business owner, I'm worried about, are the steaks on time? Do I have the appetizers? Are my forks clean? Right? And I'm worried, like, do I have enough, bourbon in the bar? Did my hostess not show up? Right? I'm worried about all of that stuff. I don't care about the credit card machine. As long as I can process payments, I don't care. But us as technicians, we're like, yeah, but is there a reader on top of that? So somebody's stealing the swipes? Like, we think in those tech terms, and being able to kind of step back and have the business conversation, right? One exercise that we'd like to do at our MSP is sit down with the business owner, right? Maybe over a good steak at the restaurant and be like, tell us how you make money. What is the most profitable portion of your business, right? Well, I'm assuming for a restaurant, it could be the bar. I don't know. I haven't owned a restaurant, but I'm assuming it could be the bar, right? And, liquor's expensive, all that fun stuff. So how are we ensuring that the pours are being the right sized every time, that, the bus person isn't, stashing the bottle under the jacket on the end of the night, shift drinks and all of that kind of stuff. As an MSP, it's not too hard to sit down with your customer and be like, hey, tell me how you make money, and listen and shut up and let them talk and pick up on key areas of where you might be able to identify areas of risk.
I think it's great advice. Ultimately, the old kindergarten saying of you have two ears and one mouth for a reason. Really listening is such an important part of this. And if you can help the blind spots, that's what we have to do. And again, this 10x ecosystem concept of bringing the right vendors together so that we all can cover these different blind spots that may be there for our customer is really just so critical. I can't lean into that enough as part of this conversation, because ultimately I do think it's the better together, how 1 + 1 + 1 can equal 10 is super important.
Mm-hmm, exactly. So we're starting to wind down, Joe. I'd take a few seconds for your next comment, and we'll keep going.
So this is what happens. A lot of us are long-winded. We got 3 long-winded people here, so we have a lot to say. I do want to do a shout out to Dan Lee at Red Cup IT, if you're listening. I see he's attending, and then Nett Lynch at BC3. These are 2 amazing firms. They're partners that really think about this topic. And I think it's so important to find thought leaders within this space. And I just doing a shout out because I've had some really awesome conversations with both of them around governance, compliance as a service, continuous compliance, those types of solutions that the end customer is largely looking for to help them sleep at night. So anyway, back to you, Tim.
No. And we actually were working together with Dan, because Dan's going to help me solve a couple of problems that I'm facing. Oh, yeah. Dan,
that's ecosystem right there.
Yeah, that's 10xing. So yeah, I mean, apparently I'm bringing in Dan at Red Cup IT to help me with a couple of AWS challenges that I'm trying to solve for around how to store data. Right. All right. I'm gonna tangent for a second. So there's a lot of GRC tools out there, right? And most of them have an upload your evidence. When you're talking and reviewing GRC platforms and they have that upload your evidence, ask them some serious questions. Ask them, where is that data hosted? US East, US West, the EU, right? GDPR. Ask them, where's that data hosted? Is it encrypted? Who has access, right? How are you dealing with securing and protecting that data of that evidence for your control frameworks and your audits? One of the challenges that I'm looking at is building the evidence locker, right? I don't want to store that. I mean, I could spin up an AWS bucket and dump everything in there and protect it the best I can. But the reality is it's your customer's data. It is their evidence. It's not yours. You're facilitating the work. So really, they should probably own that data, and that data should probably live in their Azure or AWS ecosystem. So when you're evaluating some of the tools, and maybe I just blew out Lingard because maybe you have that feature and I just threw you against under the bus, but when you're evaluating data storage, especially for compliance evidence, have a conversation with the vendor. That's where Dan and Red Cup's going to try to help us build out an actual evidence locker that you can manage, that your customer owns.
Yeah, and I think the proper configuration of AWS is where we live, right? I mean, that's one of the premises The public S3 bucket situation that continues to plague all of us with PII data being leaked, it needs to stop. But Lingard verifies for this. It's something that we have to educate our customers about. What does it really mean to manage IT properly and protect the attack surface? IT and security are yin and yang. When we say security, it's the same. It's all the same. You have to have proper IT processes, security processes, and we as practitioners recognize that these are not two separate boxes. And the gap that exists between them when you do separate them is where data breaches happen. It's yin and yang. They're together. And you have to operate and execute as a team, which is our third core value at Lingard. And that means having alignment so that everyone is working towards the betterment of the posture. Why? Because we don't want to run around like chickens. Like, it's just silly. Let's run the place like a fridge. Let's protect those environments. Let's focus on enabling that business to be profitable, because that's what your end customer is asking you to do, right? Not run around like chickens.
Yeah, the other core value is they want you to do that, and they want you to do that in an efficient a way as possible and with an outrageous sense of urgency. And when you have the right tools and ecosystem in place that gives you visibility to help you run the business really efficiently, that's the real name of the game, because customers expect that outrageous sense of urgency. And it's at the center of what Lingard does, is making sure that everything that we do, we're acting that way, and we're building our solution to enable you to be able to act that way.
So as we wind down in the last 4 minutes here, and I said 4 minutes because there's 3 of us, so we get a minute apiece. As we wind down here in the last 4 minutes, I always like to end this with one key takeaway from each of us. And Michelle, let me cue you up. So what is one key takeaway from today's session that you'd like MSPs to know?
Well, the first thing I'd like them to know is that the vendor ecosystem that you're dealing with owes you growth, profitability, and sanity. So bringing those things together by having us all work together towards your goals, not talking about, essentially the bits and bytes, but really how do we drive growth, profitability, and sanity for your businesses. That's what we should be doing as an ecosystem. Choose your partners wisely so you get those who do that.
Awesome. And you talked a little bit about that, choose your partners wisely, in a most recent LinkedIn post, which I thought was great. You have such a really good way of saying things. I need to learn better from you, because I try to say stuff, I get too long-winded, then I have a little help from GPT to reword all my long-winded. Yeah, you have a really great way of being able to say things there on LinkedIn. So if you're not following Michelle on LinkedIn, hit the like, go over there, go over there and follow. So Joe, you're up next, my friend. What is one key takeaway?
Beyond following Michelle, because she teaches me every day on how to take my gibberish and simplify it. She allows me, a little bit of room to operate in terms of okay, how do we take this thing down a notch? And I think that's awesome. But here's the thing I want to tell everyone. It is irresponsible for you as an MSP or MSP owner to not figure out how to run and secure your end customers profitably. You do a lot of security related work. You need to get paid for it. You need to generate revenue from it. Why? Because you need to also live to the next day. Your customer doesn't want you to be unsuccessful. They want you to be successful. You just have to show them value. I shared something in the chat. It's about actually driving profitability while talking about protecting the attack surface. We need to talk about this, because here's the deal. Security is hard work. The game has changed. You need to be in a position to actually profitably gain from this while also driving profitability for your end customer. So let's talk protecting the attack surface. Feel free to DM me, connect with me on LinkedIn on that topic. Back to you, Tim.
Awesome, Joe, and thanks so much for that. And no, I'm not pulling me up on full screen, because I like to be able to see everybody, right? And so my key takeaway is start someplace, do something, find vendors that are willing and able to help you as an MSP better yourselves so you can better protect your customers. Look at left of boom types of strategies to better protect on the defend side, better govern on that side. I know, Keith, you don't like that word, but working together with vendors that want to work together is going to help you make that wheel a little rounder, a little faster, and a lot more profitable. So thank you, everybody. Let me just really quick look over in chat, make sure we haven't missed anything. I know Keith's been pretty vocal over there. Thank you. Kyle, thanks for joining. Well, there's Joe and a whole bunch of other people. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Next week on the 11th, right? I believe, yes. Same bat time, different bat channel. So next week on the 11th, we'll be bringing the next episode of this. So make sure you do the follow, like thingies, the subscribe stuff. And we'll see everybody on the 11th.
Thanks all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Righty. And I had an exit video, but it's the wrong one. So we're just going to say goodbye and see you on the 11th.